Now it's time to finish our discussion of functions by looking at some application problems. The question at hand is, the sum of two numbers is 87. Let x denote one of the numbers. Part 1 is express the product of the two numbers as a function of x. And part 2 is express the sum of the square roots of the two numbers as a function of x. Now let's discuss some strategies here. First of all, I want you to be prepared to read a question more than one time, because you're going to need to pick up bits of information each time you read the problem. The first thing I see is that x is one of my numbers and that there are two numbers. So let's just let x equal one number, and let's give the other number a name. We'll call it y. Okay. Now here's the way I like to approach these problems. Part 1 and part 2 both have a word in common. Express. I want you to train yourselves to read these in the following manner. What is it that express modifies? And in part 1, we're trying to express the product of the two numbers as a function of x. So let's start with the idea of product. The product of the two numbers as they stand is x times y. In order to have the product to be dependent upon only x, we will need to find a way to replace y. And that means that we're going to have to reread the problem. So we're going to keep x in the formula, and we're going to look for a way to replace y. So I'll read my problem again. And I notice that it says the sum of the two numbers is 87. So x plus y equals 87, which means that y itself is the same as 87 minus x. Now you're ready to put the two together. The product is x times y, and y is the same as 87 minus x. So the product is x times the quantity 87 minus x. We don't need to simplify anymore. We're given a CalcPad box to type in, so we're good to go. Okay, similarly in part 2, here's that word express again. What does it modify? The sum. Okay, the sum of what? The square roots of the two numbers as a function of x. So before we worry about the total answer, just think about, what do we mean by the sum of the square roots of the two numbers? Well, the two numbers are x and y, so we would have the square root of x plus the square root of y. We want to write this as a function of x, which means that we want to keep x and replace any variable that's not x. So in this case, we'll replace y. We already knew from our part 1 that y is the same as 87 minus x. So we'll substitute 87 minus x for y, and our final answer for the sum of the square roots is the square root of x plus the square root of 87 minus x. Now look at both of your answers. Ask yourself before you move on, if I want them each to be functions of x, is that what I'm looking at? Is this a product and the sum of the square roots equaling a formula only involving x? And that's your goal.